This podcast project is an initiative created and offered by the non-profit organization The Podcast Factory Org, with sponsorship from Transforma Brussels Innovation Playground. Since January 2025 and for the next 5 years, we are also sponsored by Plug-in Company, our preferred charging station and cart operator. The Podcast Factory Org is very proud to be a member of CAIA, Coalition of Ecopreneurs, and to collaborate with the Love Health Center. You can find all episodes of all our podcasts on the website whatsyourstory.be.
You're listening to the Podcast Factory.
Welcome to a new episode of What's Your Story? Everyone's got a story to tell. What's yours? That's the very essence of our podcast, uncovering the journeys, experiences, and insights that makes each story unique. Today, we're bringing you a very special episode because, as we've done every year for the past 2 years, we're joining the Podcasthon movement. So what is Podcasthon? For 7 days, thousands of podcasters will unite for a global charity event. Between the 15th and the 21st of March 2025, each podcaster will dedicate an episode to a charity on their podcast channel to highlight the incredible work of people who often volunteer in the shadows, contributing tirelessly to society for various causes. They truly deserve to be celebrated. This podcast, above all, and don't forget this, listeners, is a call to action for donations. For this project, it's absolutely crucial. I stress again, this is a call for donation. They really need your support. And you'll see that today's discussion is more than worthy of your contributions because it concerns everyone. I won't reveal too much for now. Sitting across from me is Rebecca Lo Bue.
Hello, Caroline. Thank you for having me today.
Rebecca, today we're in the offices of the Oncidium Foundation. This podcast is being offered in English and French. Let's begin with our classic question. From your teenage dreams to today, are you aligned with those dreams? This will help our listeners understand your journey leading to your current role as CEO of Oncidium Foundation, which you represent at our microphone.
I've always been passionate around marketing and communication. It's a field I was always impressed by, so I decided to study this field. And I was very lucky enough to be hired by a company called IBA, first as a marketing assistant initially, and then I could evolve to become the marketing director of this company. It was in the nuclear medicine field. So I've been there for 18 years, almost 19 actually. And this is what led me to arrive here at the Oncidium Foundation, still in the nuclear medicine field, today as the CEO of the foundation.
Can you explain the mission of the Oncidium Foundation?
So the Oncidium Foundation is a non-profit organization recognized as a public interest, and very important to highlight, it's totally independent from any commercial or pharmaceutical company. Our neutrality is very important in our day-to-day activities. And we have organized our activities around 3 pillars that are access, education, and hope. So what we want is to enhance and develop and make accessible radioligand therapy across the world. It's really our mission. Now, how do we do that is around our 3 pillars, that are access, education, and hope. So I can develop those 3. So in terms of access, we have developed a network of ambassadors. Today, we count more than 105 local ambassadors. They are experts in the radioligand therapy, and they make sure we achieve our global mission at a national level. In a way, it makes sense in the local reality, because every country is different in terms of access in radioligand therapy. And it's very important to tackle those barriers and to challenge them and make sure we can enhance access everywhere in the world regarding radioligand therapy.
Before diving into the second and third pillars, could you explain what this therapy is and how it works?
So radioligand therapy is still a not well-known field in oncology. And it is based on a term called radiotheranostics. So it's a contraction of 3 words, radioactivity, thera for therapy, and gnostic for diagnostics. So concretely, what is it? On the superficie of the tumor cells, they are kind of proteins. And researchers have developed a ligand that will bind into those proteins. So we know how to reach these cancer cells on the body, not only on the primary tumor, but also on the metastatic cells on the body.
They fit together like two pieces of a puzzle.
Exactly. So it's a ligand that will bind directly into the tumor cells. So it's the first part. And then we will, on the first step, attach to it diagnose this molecule. It's a radioactive diagnosis molecule that will allow to clearly identify where are those tumor cells spread on the body. And it can be seen on a PET scanner typically. So this is the first part, the imaging phase. Based on that, we can identify which patient is eligible for the treatment or not. Some patients do not respond to this diagnosis phase, and then they will be referred to other specialists for other treatments. But for those who we use the word to answer the diagnosis phase, we can then go to the phase 2, which is the therapy phase. So we will still take this very same ligand, but in this phase, we will attach a therapy molecule, still a radioactive therapy molecule that will destroy this tumor cell really in a very targeted way, protecting the healthy tissues around the tumor. So that's very important. So and it has very less side effects compared to other therapies that are known for the moment. So it is not the ultimate therapy, but it's additional weapons that the oncologists today have to treat cancer.
Okay, you said this usually happens at the end of the therapy. Why not earlier?
Today, radioligand therapy is still at this early stage. It's a very brand new field, but very promising. So the clinical trials are really exponentially increasing in this field. So it is developed for some applications, namely for prostate cancer is very well developed, also for neuroendocrine tumors, but also developing in many, many other applications, but still at its development phase. So the aim of the Oncidium Foundation is to raise awareness around this therapy and also increase its availability and accessibility all around the globe.
And that's why you have another pillar we'll talk about now.
Exact. So the second pillar is education. So we have just heard that it's at initial stage, so meaning that still a lot of work needs to be done in terms of awareness and education. This is why we've made this a priority, because it's like a virtuous circle. If you have more education, you have more access. More access will lead to more hope will lead to more education. It's a virtuous circle that we want to implement here. So education is key if we want to increase access of it. And education to who? It's education to patients and patients associations, education to referral doctors like urologists, oncologists, and many others, and also education on the nuclear medicine field, where we provide the latest information and up-to-date information in a neutral way for the experts in nuclear medicine.
I have a question regarding our knowledge in Europe, particularly in Belgium, about this therapy. Where do we currently stand in terms of awareness?
So in Belgium, we are very lucky because we are like in the kingdom of the nuclear medicine. We are very lucky to have, for example, a center of excellence in radioligand therapy at the Institut Jules Bordet in Brussels. So we are very lucky. We have the treatment available and we have the reimbursement. So Belgian citizens, they are very lucky to have access to this kind of therapy. Unfortunately, this is not the case worldwide. Every year, we have 10 million of people are dying from cancer. 10 million, that's huge. And recent publications has highlighted that if we take the example of prostate cancer, that's a very good application and very developed in radioligand therapy. For prostate cancer, 156,000 people living with cancer, with prostate cancer, are eligible for radioligand therapy. But only 13,000 will be effectively treated with radioligand therapy this year. It means less than 10 times less. And if we now have a look to low-income countries, 0 patients will be treated with radioligand therapy this year. So that's why the Oncidium Foundation is really focusing its activities for developing countries where people has no access and no means to access this treatment.
And now there's a strong connection to the third pillar of the Oncidium Foundation.
Exact. So the third pillar is hope. So on one side, we support research programs aiming to increase the accessibility of those treatments or decrease the cost of those treatments. But very importantly, we have developed this new program called RLT Connect. And basically, it's a website based on the offer and demand system. So it's a donation platform for patients who cannot afford those treatments. Basically, the practitioner will submit the case of their patient after analyzing their financial situation. And so they submit the case. They say, okay, I have a patient who needs 4 doses, one in March, April, May, and June. And on the other hand, we have agreement with radiopharmaceuticals company who accepted to donate doses for patients in need. So it's really like an offer and demand, and we are here to create a match between the offer and demand, and we act as a facilitator. So we put them in contact and we make sure the patient is properly administered. So we have launched this program in March this year during the World Theranostics Conference. And so far, we've been able to have 100 doses administered for patients in financial need.
How much does a single dose of this treatment cost?
Approximately for developing countries, the treatment cost is 20,000 euros. And in those countries, it's something people cannot afford for such a price. It's unaffordable for many persons living with cancer worldwide. This is why we are here, and our objective is through this program is to have 2,000 doses administered in 5 years.
So, can citizens also donate to the foundation? Because pharmaceutical sector funding might not be enough, right?
We are very lucky to have these pharmaceuticals company donating treatment doses for these patients, but of course, so it's a very good first step, but it is not enough to achieve our moonshot, this objective for those patients, because this represents a project of 10 million euros in 5 years. So the donation that we have today is not enough to reach these targets, but we are very optimistic and I'm pretty much convinced we can reach this moonshot.
And we hope this podcast helps you receive significant donations from citizens too. Now, before we started recording, you mentioned 2 annual events where you participate every year. One related to prostate cancer and the other a global marathon. Is that correct?
Yes. Every year, we organize the Tackle Cancer Challenge. It's a sport challenge activity. So it combines both physical activity and donation to help patients. So basically how it works, so a patient can install an application on their mobile phone and they can register during 2 weeks per year their sport activity. And it's converted into a running unit. So this year we had more than 500 participants and together we could reach a 36,000 kilometers altogether. So it's a world tour that we've been able to achieve all together with the objective first to raise awareness around radioligand therapy, but also to collect funds because we could have sponsors, companies organizing team building activities, and also it allows you to discuss why are we running for again? Oh yes, about radioligand therapy, what is it? And then you create this virtuous circle that we are trying to generate in every of our activities.
And what about prostate cancer?
Every year, there is this movement called Movember. It has been initiated by the Prostate Cancer Foundation. And it's during November, it's a month where we raise awareness around prostate cancer and all possible treatments available for, because it's the first incidence worldwide in male cancer, this prostate cancer. And so we are working on RLT channel. It's broadcast dedicated to patients to explain the options of radioligand therapy in prostate cancer.
Do you also work on cancer prevention or is that outside the foundation's scope?
We have the radio theranostics and we really focus on the therapy part because if we want to have an impact, we have to focus on something. And it's really my role in the foundation is always to focus on our activities in order to have the highest impact possible for the patients.
I have a message for our audience. Please think about how many people you know in your family or circle who have had or currently have cancer, and even those who have sadly passed away from it. Cancer touches everyone. And we should all contribute with the donations to help advance this technology that holds so much promise. Since when has the foundation existed?
It's a very good question. The foundation has been created by Dr. Zimmerman 14 years ago, but he didn't have neither the time nor the funding to run the foundation. So we really started the operating activities of the foundation 6 years ago when I joined the foundation, and we could start building a team. Today, almost 12% full-time working at the foundation here in Belgium, but with a global scope. I can say that we are now having a real impact in the life of patients. And that's what's really motivating me is receiving all these messages from patients whose life could be saved thanks to this RLT Connect program. It's really every time, I admit, it's always heartwarming. And when we receive those messages in the team, it's always like a victory that we have. And we now have a close relationship with those people where we exchange pictures of our success, but also of their life, and having messages like last week we received a message from a patient from Argentina say, look, thanks to you, I can hold my granddaughter in my hands. Or, thanks of the Oncidium Foundation, now I can have a normal life. For me, it's gold, and it's worth really waking up every morning.
So many testimonials give you the strength to keep going. Sharing what you do on social media is also important. You don't just need donations, you also need visibility. So we invite everyone listening to this podcast to share, like, and comment on all your posts on every platform where you're active. Could you also share your website address?
So you can visit us on oncidium-foundation.org or follow us on every social media if you look for Oncidium Foundation.
Please, listeners, follow these pages, not just to stay informed, but also because every reaction to a post from the Oncidium Foundation boosts their visibility, and that's essential. We're reaching the end of this podcast with our closing HR questions. How would you define a great HR professional?
For the Oncidium Foundation, I decided not to have any HR-specific position. I have this feeling that the impulsion and the motivation should come from the leadership of the foundation. This is why I decided that the Oncidium Foundation would be run only through collective intelligence, because that's really motivating me. And I have seen through experience in the past from IBA Group, for example, who implemented this really at a global scale, at very large scale, that really the impact on the motivation of the team is really, and motivated people are people that are performing.
If you had one message for all HR professionals, leaders, managers, or CEOs listening to us, what would you say?
I would suggest to include saving life programs like ours into their SDG program. So today, every company needs to have a SDG program implemented. So helping a nonprofit organization like ours give also a lot of meanings and also a motivation for their own team as well to realize that they can take part to a global initiative like ours. So supporting us with, of course, donation, but also with visibility or with any kind of support they think they are able to help us. I mean, we need, for example, in-kind donation as well.
And let's not forget about sponsors.
And also sponsors, of course.
And so sponsors can also contact you, correct?
Yes, please. So we do have a donate button directly on our website, or that allows also tax deduction. That might be interesting to mention as well.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you for having me with you, Caroline, today.
A reminder to our listeners, in the podcast text, there's a link to leave a voice message with a question, a comment, a note of gratitude, or a recommendation. Be generous, make donations, and remember that this year, Podcasthon is extending its reach to English-speaking podcasters. Spread the word and join this fantastic solidarity movement next year too. Thank you, and see you soon for more podcast adventures.
You're listening to the Podcast Factory.
This podcast project is an initiative created and offered by the non-profit organization The Podcast Factory Org, with sponsorship from Transforma Brussels Innovation Playground. Since January 2025 and for the next 5 years, we are also sponsored by Plug-in Company, our preferred charging station and cart operator. The Podcast Factory org is very proud to be a member of Kaya, Coalition of Ecopreneurs, and to collaborate with the Love Health Center. You can find all episodes of all our podcasts on the website whatsyourstory.be.